the highlights, always the focus are
Right.
the crazy things and people doing nutty things and people mistreating each other and whatever. And I believe that the corporate media magnifies this stuff. Because I mean, if you added it all up, so it reminds me. In fact, here's an example. It reminds me back in, everybody may be familiar with the Baltimore riots. I think I've talked about this a couple of times.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When the so-called Baltimore riots were happening, I think in response to Freddie Gray and the decision or whatever. I don't remember exactly, but there were marches and whatnot. My daughter was there and talked about a peaceful march. She had video. She shared video of it. Thousands of people peacefully marching through the street, just making their voices heard. But that the night that everybody remembers, CNN and Fox and everybody, there were three events that happened that night. So and what happened was the corporate media kept playing it in rotation for over 24 solid hours.
The same
so there was
scenes.
The group of young men jumping up and down on the police car, smashing it. There was looting at a CVS, and then a fire, which turned out to be at a church property. And they played those three things. So it's three locations. If you added it up, maybe 36 people, perhaps total.
Right.
What is the population of Baltimore? You know what I mean?
Right.
Here's 36. I mean, let's be excessive. Let's say it was 6 people.
Oh, that is excessive.
How does that
JC.
compare?
Do you realize how many people that was? I mean, that's
right. So 72 people.
That is way more people.
Right. So what does that compare to the entire population of Baltimore? 3 physical locations this is happening. But the way that it's the focus and magnification of the way they put it out on the media.
Right. It made
really
it look like Baltimore was burning.
The world was ending. The entire planet was on fire, and the world's coming to an end. So we're constantly met really with the counter reality, which is real reality. We're met with the reality of, again, and I'm not exaggerating, the tens of thousands of people that we interact with every year. And the reality is completely the opposite of what you see on the news, the narrative that's pushed out. Obviously what's happening in that place affects those people. But I mean, if you ran the numbers, even what we saw in Minneapolis during the summer, Portland, Minneapolis. I mean, you look at what happened in Portland. Okay, all the stuff that was going on. Yeah. What if you tallied up? What are the number of individuals involved in this? How many of Antifa people, right? If you ran the numbers, you would discover this is such a minuscule minuscule number of the population, even in the city of Portland. Now, I understand that in general, maybe the ideology runs along those same lines, but not to the extent that you're talking about people that are out destroying property and hurting other people, this sort of thing. So you're really talking about, as we say many times, the tyranny of the minority, right? This is really a small sliver of people, and it's magnified by the media. A lot of this is optics to stir up a particular sentiment.
And they exaggerate.
And I will still maintain, I do maintain, based on what we see, a majority of the American people are good people. Yep. They're good to each other. They want to be good to each other. And many well-intentioned, unassuming people are whipped into a frenzy by the media,
right,
transmitting this false reality.
Well, they exaggerate.
It's mind control.
They exaggerate to the point of lying, and then on the other side of the coin, they completely ignore the evidence of the opposite of their narrative, right? So I remember that same place where, they showed the same street corner, the same 24 people, and then they had an actual peaceful march, a peaceful rally where there were thousands of people, and the media completely ignored that. You have peaceful...
Don't forget, add the fact, when you talk about the various riots, you can also add this fact, the fact that they were transported from place to place.
Yeah.
Many of the riots in different locations were in fact the same people.
Yeah. And not only that,
so that's even fewer numbers.
JC, I'll call your memory back to Ferguson. We actually spoke to people who were at Ferguson. If you remember, there were groups of local men who had volunteered to guard the businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually, and this is a fact, this was the local police department there in Ferguson who was actually being goaded by the federal agents that were actually the instigators in the division.
Absolutely.
It was the federal agents and the local police department that were trying to instigate the local people against those who had shown up to actually guard the businesses.
People hired and people volunteered to guard the businesses.
Yeah.
The federal officers were going around and telling residents that those people are KKK white supremacists, right? Supremacists who have come here to kill you.
Yes, that's what they were telling. They were actually instilling fear in the children for these people who had been hired and volunteered to protect the businesses. And they went around, JC, they told us they went around and started handing out donuts and talking to the
connecting
people and
with
saying,
the people to counter the false narrative that the federal agents
they actually
were
said they talked to him and said, hey, do we, we want to talk to you. We're here to protect you the same as everybody else. Do you think we want to kill you? We think we're here to lynch you.
Right.
And he said at the end of the day, at the end of everything, that the people that were first in fear of them, because they admitted they were in fear of them based on what the feds and the local police were saying, they were actually then showing up and bringing them coffee and thanking them. And it was just really, really an incredible sight. So you have this
is not conspiracy theory. This is fact. This is firsthand information.
Firsthand. Yes.
Really disgusting individuals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
The FBI agent that goes around and disparages my character because he's a coward.
And
I forget what his name is. You remember what his name is?
I don't, but
cowards.
People are people, this is a warning, and I say all the time, this is a warning to the those who would blindly back someone just because they have a badge and a uniform.
Right.
These were uniformed law enforcement that were going around doing this.
Yeah.
So
it was
there are
really
wicked people in every profession. I don't care what it is.
The other thing is you have the blasting of Biden saying, if you're going to stand up against the government, you better have M16s and nukes. And yet the complete media blackout of the sheriffs like Brad Rogers, who kicked the USDA and the FDA out of his county, and they're still not harassing them because of what Sheriff Brad Rogers did. You've got Chavez County Sheriff, I just forgot his name.
Yeah,
who actually stood up to the governor and said, I'm not going to shut down for COVID. And now we're seeing more and more sheriffs stand up all across the country, and there's still a media blackout.
And think about if you use that kind of language. If you said, you better bring F-16s and whatever, that, YouTube boots you off for hate speech and promoting violence and all that.
Oh, come on, JC. We lived it.
But you got the president of the United States speaking like that to the American public, which he supposedly represents.
Well, you and I lived that when the Senate president here in Florida, the Senate president in Florida legislature sent me an email and told me that he thought that I should be shot or hanged for telling the state legislators that they have a duty to stand up to the federal government. And so if I had written, can you imagine if I had written an email to the Senate president telling him I thought he should be shot or hanged for a vote that he took?
Right. You would have a visit from the FBI.
I would have a visit from the FBI. This is a Liberty show today, JC. We are a teach show and not a talk show. I wanted to go back up here and highlight this. I hope I didn't lose it, but it's moving very slowly now. We had a dad come in, said that his daughter was inspired after watching, here it is, John Stagner, since we've discovered non-compliant, my 10-year-old daughter is inspired. She gave a talk about the immorality of socialism in her 5th grade class today.
Wow.
He says, I'm one proud daddy. Thank you for your inspiration.
Yeah, we heard of
that's really amazing.
We
That's
heard
really great.
8 or 9-year-old taking the comic book version of Socialism Under the Microscope and reading it in class.
That is awesome.
So these young, I mean, there's so many young patriots rising and being trained. It's amazing.
I get stories like this every day.
What's happened to Frank? Is Frank off the air?
Did Frank get kicked off again?
I don't know. I'm hearing people making worrisome comments about Frank. Quite frankly, are we talking about quite frankly, Frank?
I don't know.
So we'll have to check in with Frank.
Kicked off as much as we do. I mean,
probably more.
I didn't mention, but we're actually in we're in YouTube lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much longer that's going to last, the YouTube lockdown that we're on, but
yeah.
And once we get back on YouTube, I'm not sure how long we'll stay. So I want to encourage everybody to catch us on one of our alternate platforms, which we're on Twitch, we're on DLive, we're still on Facebook, and we're on Rumble. So we need these platforms to be shared so that we can get this out. And my prayer is every day, JC, that the numbers reflect that the absence of YouTube means nothing at all. So we start raising up awareness on Rumble, start sharing our videos on Rumble, letting people know, letting people know we're on Rumble, we're on DLive, we're on Twitch. DLive has a very different kind of audience that we don't always get to reach. I would love for our DLive crew to really start sharing the DLives. I'll confess that I'm not real educated on how DLive works, but I know that there's a crowd there that needs to be reached, and I'd love to reach them that way. So talk show. I wanted to share this with you because we were talking about the sheriffs who were standing up for the rights of the people, saying we're not going to shut down, we're not going to lock down, we're not going to do this. And here's the sort of the hypocrisy of the media. So a sheriff told a Wisconsin teenager to take down a COVID-19 Instagram post. Can you imagine, JC? Mr. Hall, this is Sheriff Chad Chronister. You have to tell your son to take down an Instagram post that he put up. I can't even run through my brain how that scenario works out. How does that even get to court? Because a Wisconsin deputy threatened to arrest a teenager over a COVID-19 social media post. And this post was back in March. This girl had posted about her experience with what she and her doctors believed was COVID-19. Now, this is kind of the hypocrisy of it, right? Because what she did was she posted that she felt like she got COVID on a band trip to Florida. And so the sheriff deputy demanded the 16-year-old remove the protected speech from her Instagram account. And the judge said that demanding that she do that was a First Amendment, or demanding that she remove it was a First Amendment violation. Now, she posted about her illness, a photo of her wearing an oxygen mask in the hospital, but she tested negative for COVID, right? And so anyway, we have Marquette County Sheriff Joseph Conrath sent a Sergeant Cameron Klump to her home, threatened the girl with arrest if she didn't remove the post. She took down the post at her request and then hired an attorney. Now, they told her that she had to take it down because the school said that her post was causing significant disturbance, anxiety, fear, and concern, and even panic among the other citizens. And so because of that, the sheriff told her she had to take it down. Now, the court came back, obviously, and said, your concern is not really the concern that overrides her right to make this post. Now, she tested negative. They didn't put that in the post. She called it COVID that she got on a band trip from Florida, which there is no proof of that. But now you have the media everywhere talking about how she was allowed to keep up her post, and yet we're not talking about the other fact where the sheriffs are actually protecting people's rights and trying to keep their businesses open and their churches open by refusing to comply in defense of people's rights.
Well, that's because this supported the promotion of the COVID fear.
Right.
So they would be on that side. But it seemed like this is one of the examples of things that would be a great conservative trap.
Yes, exactly.
Because the conservatives would, run to the defense of the sheriff, the sheriff taking it down because this is spreading lies and saying people are getting COVID when they're not getting COVID. This is putting, blaming Florida and whatever. And so the sheriff was right to make them take this false information down. So this is one of those, what they usually use to trap conservatives into attacking their own.
You're right, JC. That the posting of this article actually could be one of those, hey, we'll win on both sides kind of thing. So we get to encourage people to make their posts about COVID because we want them to do that. Remember, we had the Detroit newspaper come on on Facebook and say, post all your stories about unvaccinated people who died. And they got like 23,000 posts of people who actually had vaccinated people die. So, but you post this, then they're waiting for the response of the conservatives saying, well, where's the fact checker? The sheriff was just being the fact checker. And again, the judge was right in this case. The sheriff has no authority
because it was a government actor doing it.
Right, because a government actor doing it. This would be different from
Instagram pulling it down.
Right.
It's just always you see this kind of stuff very very often.
Right.
Where they craft something that appeals to the conservatives, and then the conservatives will support the attack on the First Amendment speech because it fits,
Which interestingly, JC,
and the other side does the same. I'm just saying this one's unusual because, well, this one is different. It's not about taking down, people trying to educate on the reality of what's going on with vaccines or COVID or whatever.
Right. So interestingly enough, that segues into my next one that I've been trying to put up for a long time because this is a really great teaching moment. So a Missouri teacher resigned because the school told her that he had to take down the pride flag in his classroom. And the parent complained that the teacher would teach him to be gay and that he had to take down the pride flag. And so the Missouri teacher, as the article reads here on Yahoo News, Missouri teacher resigned from his job after he was threatened with termination for displaying an LGBTQ pride flag and inclusive signs in his classroom. He was only 2 days into the school year at Neosho Junior High, where he was called into a meeting with administrators regarding a pride flag that he displayed in his classroom. So this is where the trap comes in, right? Because the school is a government actor, and you would have many conservatives. So what you do then is you change out the pride flag for maybe a Bible sitting on the desk or a cross on the screensaver or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And many times conservatives would be outraged that the public school would be dismissing a teacher or telling a teacher they had to take down, put away their Christian flag, their Christian paraphernalia. But in the same context, you have the conservatives would be like, oh yeah, you can't have a pride flag up.
Right.
And it's really,
but it would basically fall in the same category.
It is the same category. It is the same law. And so if this teacher finds out that the school allowed other teachers to hang Christian flags or to have Christian stuff in their rooms, this teacher actually has a very potentially viable lawsuit, because the context, the standard is, if you allow a teacher to hang personal items, then you can't discriminate based on the content of those personal items.
Yeah.
And this is public school, mind you. This is not a private school.
Right.
If you're in a private school, then you can dictate away. But this is a public school paid with tax dollars. And what you do for one, you must do for all.
Now, couldn't you? Right. So by the same token, you could make, seems to me, they could make a rule for no flags. They can control what's on the walls, period.
Yeah, so that's what they would have to do.
It's either no flag or every flag.
Right.
If you're talking about a government setting, it's no flag or every flag.
It's no flag or every flag. And it can be even more than that, JC. It can be anything that describes your personal stance on something.
That is funny.
It doesn't even have to be a flag. It could be a cross or a Bible or a screensaver or something.
Pride is at the top of the list in Proverbs 6 of things God hates. So that is pretty funny.
But this is the problem that we create in our government programs, our government schools, our government offices.
Problem is that you send your kid to public school.
Yeah, right.
The problem is being in government school in the first place.
Yeah. So here's the answer to the question. If you're offended by this, then send your child to a Christian school where they have the authority to say, don't hang your flag.
Yeah, people are still clueless. Most people are not awake. We're still fighting for restoration, whatever we think is going to be restored. I give you an example. I was talking today in class about fiat money and collapse of economic systems and that sort of thing.
Did you happen to talk to him about the silver coins? And
we did, as a matter of fact.
That's my favorite example.
I was talking about I was talking about fiat, and somebody, I said, who has some paper money, and somebody pulled out $1. It was actually a silver certificate. It was a silver dollar certificate.
Oh, they were tricking you, JC.
I was like, wow. And so we had 3 Federal Reserve notes, and then that thing. But anyway,
which the silver certificate isn't worth anything today.
Yeah. So one of the points in that context is, the money system, that money system is not backed, not backed by silver, not backed by gold, not backed by anything tangible. So then what is the basis of the monetary system? It's trust, right? Trust. That's the value. It's trust. In other words, we just accept, right? When I walk into the store, a $100 bill, hand it to the cashier, they're going to hand me what they believe is $100 worth of goods in exchange for that. So why? Because that paper has no actual inherent value, no intrinsic value. It's not backed by anything. So it's just trust. And one of the illustrations of that, when you look at, Weimar Republic, the former fall of the Soviet Union, all of those things. So when somebody asked about, well, what happens when, the money collapses, this collapses, it devalues, whatever. So it's a weird thing, because you see what happens in reality is the people will just pile up more of that money, right? The prices go up, allegedly, right? It's the value of the money goes to nothing. It's like the prices are increasing. So a loaf of bread is no longer 50 rubles, it's 100 rubles, and it's 1,000 rubles, and it's 10,000, it's 100,000, it's a million, whatever. And so you're rolling money is worth nothing, and you think a wheelbarrow full of nothing is worth more. So they roll the wheelbarrows full of money. Well, why would they do that? The system is collapsing. That's because they're still operating on the basis of trust, their belief. They believe, in other words, that they're hedging their bets for the system coming back.
Right.
They're waiting. Well, it's going to come back. It's going to reset.
Right.
And I kind of think that's our mentality. That's where we are. So the fact is, the battle, we're not waiting for the battle. The fight's not coming. The war's not coming. It's already here. But people do not have a war mentality at this point. So why they're, you see people fighting at the school boards and fighting, to keep their kids in the public school under their own terms, no mask. We need to be able to hang whatever flag or not hang this flag or whatever, fighting for all of this system. Wouldn't that be like saying, the Nazis have come, Hitler's taken over, and the Nazis now control the schools? Would you send your child to that school? Right. Would that be the place that you send your child to be educated? But that's where we are. The enemy has the schools. They've had the school for a long time. And we're fighting to keep them there. So it's a strange thing to me altogether. Any of these sorts of issues about the public school and what all these things that people are fighting for. And it's just simply evident that people are still operating on that. We're trusting this to come back. We're trusting life to go back to normal. I want to go back to that place where I'm not bothered. Things aren't,
Dear
disrupting
Jesus,
my life.
Save us from that. I hope we never go back to not being bothered. I hope we never go back to not being disrupted.
I just want to be very straightforward. This is where I still believe a lot of people, the majority of the so-called conservative movement, I think is still there. So we're still fighting for, let me go back to my normal life. And then that normal life included sending my child conveniently every day to the enemy's brainwashing headquarters. And I want to go back to that because that was the easy way. That was the comfortable way, whatever. So I don't understand. People have not come to that place of, I think, realizing where we are.
Yeah.
This is a war. They're out for your extermination, ideological extermination, and to some extent, your literal extermination.
Yeah.
And
to a good extent of your literal extermination.
You can't be in that kind of scenario and operate like things are like they've always been. It's
JC,
just strange to me.
Somebody asked in the chat room about a good lesson source for fiat money. And this came to mind not as a lesson for fiat money, but free market. I still think this is one of the best lessons I've ever read on understanding the free market and how it's supposed to work. You've read The Miraculous
Translation. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. I mean,
I like it.
Basic.
Because it boils down the basics.
Process of production and that
right,
sort of thing. Right.
So that's one of the things. And I was trying to see if the Tuttle twins had something on fiat, but they have the Tuttle twins and the Jekyll and the Creature from Jekyll Island. So they have a Tuttle twins version of the Creature from Jekyll Island.
Well,
so
it's not that complicated. You know, I mean, you have the central banks create money out of nothing. I mean, it's bizarre. It's surreal to think about where, somebody's sitting here typing on a keyboard and voila, that's more money. Right. And then a bank needs more money from the central bank. Okay, there you go. I'm going to email you this money.
Yeah, but I want something that gets
voila, you have something.
Down to something that's even bizarre. More basic than that. I mean, that's sort of the process of it. I think people need to understand what is the difference between currency that has intrinsic value and currency that has pretend value. And that's the difference between fiat and non-fiat. And I mean, even so, we've watched documentaries about how they manipulate the value of diamonds. Somebody might say a diamond has an intrinsic value. Well, that's manipulated as well. And so is the value of gold is manipulated. But when you're dealing with something that has its own value and you purchase things based on their weight and their value, as opposed to magic pieces of paper. That's the real difference that people need to
it's
understand.
Not and it's not
because
it's not the price of gold manipulated. It's not those things are not manipulated. That's what's behind the scenes. So the people printing and using inflation are actually consolidating the real wealth, the tangible wealth for themselves.
Right. And the thing that really opened my eyes is that I had people who didn't understand that Bitcoin was fiat. People argued with me that Bitcoin
it's a digital fiat.
It is a digital fiat. They were like, no, it's not fiat because the Federal Reserve isn't controlling it. And I'm like, I just don't think you understand what fiat actually means.
There's no tangible asset backing digital currency. The value of the digital currency is supposedly in its anonymity and lack of being able to be controlled by a central authority. Ultimately, that's not.
I mean,
actually the case.
You had Charles the First
somewhere in between.
You had Charles the First in the 1640s creating fiat money by assigning pretend values to brass coins instead of gold and silver coins. So it really is about, it doesn't matter the medium. What it is about assigning a value that's not intrinsic to that thing, right?
Yeah. So point is, going back to the original point, it's about this issue of trust, and there's still this trust foundation that's still operational,
right?
Where people still have this trust. So we're railing at the system and we're complaining about all of these things, but in truth, there's still a level of trust there, right? Because if there were not, if your actions matched your rhetoric, then you would not have your kids in public school. So even the people that say, I don't trust the government, fact of the matter is you do trust the government.
Right.
And otherwise you would not be fighting to keep your kids in the government, to keep your kids being trained and taught by the government. So that's just an odd thing to me that a majority of people have still not awakened to. I don't know why that is. My suspicion is my theory. This is my theory. That I suspect. It's a theory I call proximity. And so it's the use of proximity. The fact that your schools are in your neighborhoods, you know the teachers, like somebody in your neighborhood knows the teacher, they're from you. This proximity, this sort of closeness. We distrust DC way over there. We distrust the people in the Capitol way over there, that sort of thing that we have no connection to. People have daily connection and personal connection with their teachers, their schools, and that sort of thing. So I think there's a psychological element to that that is leveraged to keep a foothold on that sort of trust foundation for people in that area of education.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think a great another large part of it is, the addiction to stuff. If I actually have to pay for schooling instead of public school, if I actually have to homeschool my child and maybe, take time off work to do that.
That I put in my discomfort category. That's the category I call discomfort.
I don't want to do that, and I'd rather, I can't give up whatever that thing is that I have to have and I'll sacrifice my children to the golden idols in order to have what that thing is.
Because it's not tangible. Like I don't have to write out a check. I don't have to open my wallet, pull something out, and that.
Well, but here's the thing:
it's an intangible thing. I send my child to government school, and it doesn't appear to cost me anything. The same technique is used with taxes.
Right.
I think if people had to write out a check at the end of the year to pay their taxes, we would have a completely different scenario. So they have used that psychological technique, and they cover that up to make it easy for you to alleviate the discomfort of you having to do that. So there's no barrier. There's no psychological barrier. They automatically take it out of your paycheck. You never see it. You have to do nothing. So it's very similar to the public school scenario. If you take your child private school, most of the time you literally have to drive them there yourself or arrange for them to be taken there. There's no bus going to be paid for by tax dollars going to come pick them up. in most cases, you actually have to write a check. And there's a lot of stuff that you have to do where there are these discomfort barriers. And so that's what I mean by the normal. And why going back to the normal, I probably should say the comfortable, because now with the mask is something, your child's got to wear a mask, and there's the threat of the vaccine. So there's this discomfort. They're doing something that's different, that's challenging, that's putting up a barrier for this ease of operation. It's one of those things. You guys have heard me rant about this stuff before, and I understand kids are in there and you want to fight for the kids while they're there, but we have to get to that place where you're coming up with an exit plan to get them out. And if you don't get to that acknowledgement of who the school is and what they're actually doing to your children, then you're never going to get to that place where you have some motivation to get them out.
Here's the thing.
And I think if you already know, then you wouldn't be fighting to keep them in now.
Right, exactly.
You'd be desperately trying to get them out.
I'm glad that all of this has happened and we've had such a mass exodus of the school system. And I'm a Socratic teacher. I love posing these questions. So I would pose to my, conservative families out there, are you opposed to government welfare? Do you believe that government should be engaging in the act of forced charity? If the answer to that question is I'm opposed to government welfare, then you have to be opposed to the public school, because public schools are welfare education. They are forcing people by the force of law to pay money for an education. And here's the thing, Thomas Jefferson wrote in a different but similar context, to compel a man by force to pay for things that he disbelieves or abhors is sinful and tyrannical. And we have so many parents out there who are angry about what they're teaching in the government school, don't believe what they're teaching, abhor what they're teaching, and yet we are forced to pay for that teaching. And our founders called that sinful and tyrannical because it is forced payment of welfare. And public school is government education welfare.
Well, and education is entirely different now, because obviously, Thomas Jefferson supported public education, right? The public acts, government funded that kind of thing, public universities and whatnot.
But he didn't.
But it's completely different education.
There is what they're teaching.
Right. It is not that kind of education. That's the other thing people don't recognize. So people will point back to that. These people supported school, and in fact, compulsory education was a Christian innovation. I mean, schools and universities were Christian innovation. So why would we do that? Well, it's not that anymore. So the other thing that people don't recognize is education, as you understand it, is dead. It no longer exists. There's no such thing as education in public education. It's indoctrination. It's programming. And it's a particular kind of programming. It's neo-Marxist, atheistic humanism, anti-Americanism at this point, is what you're sending your child to school to learn. Right. So why would you do that regardless of who's paying for it? I don't care if it was private funds. If some rich billionaire said, you don't have to pay anything, I'm going to write the check for you to go to a place that's going to indoctrinate your child into Marxism, atheism, humanism, anti-Americanism, and it's government's not supporting it, so you can be anti-government, whatever. This is so.
The solution
a lot of that is
this:
they don't recognize what it is. It seems to me that if you simply acknowledge what it is, regardless of the valid points you made about even the funding, is almost a secondary issue. Who cares? Why would you send your child to anything like that? So there's still a vast number of so-called conservative people that have not come to that realization, and it's very difficult for me to comprehend.
Well, the solution, we live in America, we have more solutions than anywhere else in the world, and our solutions are you don't have to send your child to government school. It's a choice. It's a priority issue. So you take your kid out, you send them to a private school. That's why we should have real charity, where real people are giving scholarships to private schools where people teach what you want them to teach. That's real charity, when you voluntarily give money for something. And
churches could fill the gap. Churches could step into the gap.
Fill the gap. You can homeschool. My goodness, JC, 10 years we've been homeschooling. It's a whole lot easier now to homeschool than it was when we were beginning. Yeah. I mean, there are homeschool platforms that are there. There are homeschool platforms popping up everywhere.
Here's the thing. If you as the parent curate the information, everything is available on everything your child needs to know is online.
Absolutely.
There is absolutely no reason for, the old model of schooling. Right. And if you have a community, you have a church, you have a community, you have neighbors, you have family, whatever, your kids interact with other kids. They get socialization, as they try to say, which is utter nonsense. I
want my child to have the socialization that they're going to get in public
school.
That's
my point.
That's why I don't put them in there.
That's my point. If you have your own community, your own church, that sort of thing. So that's another lie that they push. Your child won't be socialized, whatever. Our child has not gone to that nonsense, and he's a fully functioning human being that can interact most of the time a lot better than most kids we know with other people. So just
they're
utter nonsense.
Over-sexualized with a seared conscience about life and the value of life and that sort of thing. Now, this is a really good point that Lisa has.
Take your kid out of public school and put in private school, homeschool, and pay twice. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
But it's not actually.
But notice this: the focus is on the paying. Right. Take them out and pay twice. Let's share this. Right. So here's the focus on the paying. Mm-hmm. So I'm sending my child to public school where they teach them to be a Marxist. They teach them to hate traditional American values. They teach them to hate God. They fill them with all this sorts of nonsense. And I'm upset at the fact that I will have to pay to rescue my child from that. See, I can't wrap my brain around that line of thinking, but it is shockingly prevalent in the conservative realm.
Right. And it's also inaccurate.
You may as well have a shirt on that says that I hate my child.
Well, but it's an inaccurate propaganda to begin with. Yes, you pay, but have you looked at your property taxes lately to see how much you pay? Because what you pay in property taxes to the public school system is minuscule compared to the other taxes that you pay, and you wouldn't even be paying twice. So it just doesn't. If people really ran the numbers and saw how little they actually contributed through taxes to the public school system, that argument would really sort of wash away, because it's change. It's pennies over the year. It really makes no difference to your budget whatsoever. And then you want to argue, well, I have no kids. Why am I paying a property tax that goes to the school? I'm retired. I have no children in the house. Why am I paying for the property taxes that pays for the school? And so it really isn't about you paying to go to that school. You're not paying to go to the government school. That's not happening, because the government is paying I can't remember, JC, the last average that I said was like $15,000 per child per semester in public school.
Who knows? I'm not even going to stoop to this ridiculous argument and line of reasoning.
Yeah, but
I say leave them with it.
Yeah,
if that is really where you come from, you have bigger problems than what we're talking about.
But I want people to.
You should repent from the love of money.
Yeah,
you should get saved.
I do believe.
Or give away your children. You should put your children up for adoption. If you're more concerned with whatever, I would empty the bank account every month, not to have my child sent to a brainwashing propaganda death camp. Mm-hmm. You should put your children up for adoption if that's your problem. Oh, well, then I'm already paying taxes. You want me to pay for a private school too? Mm-hmm. No, I don't. I actually want you to sacrifice the lives of your children to Marxist, atheist, antichrist people who want to destroy humanity and exterminate a third of the population, at least.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like you to do. Why don't you go ahead and do that, since you're so upset about the idea of having to pay to rescue your children?
Well, let me
you go ahead, help yourself. I'm not interested in that argument.
Well, maybe Chris Ann's a little bit kinder, gentler, because that was the argument that helped my awakening into the
good.
morality
So give
of
it to them. Help these deluded reprobate child haters who call themselves parents.
I want to help people who maybe don't have. I mean, all of that came from me through a spiritual understanding that I didn't have at the time. Maybe I'm sure we're talking to people with different spiritual understandings, different spiritual growth. And so I want to challenge you. Somebody in the chat room said our school tax is huge.
If you need to be a Christian to love your children, something's wrong with you.
Well,
I get what you're saying, but bottom line,
somebody in the chat room said our school taxes are huge. I just don't. You've got to run those numbers. And you've got to see what they are, and you spread them out over the year, and you realize it is a fraction of what is being paid on the child every year by the government to do this, mostly because their school systems are completely bloated. JC and I used to live in a county that was less than 60,000 people in the county. And members of the school board, people who worked on the school board, were making $80,000 a year in a county with less than 60,000 people in the county.
No, ma'am, I'm not going to calm down. Shut up.
So anyway, I want people to realize you're being lied to about this whole you're paying for your child to go to government school. You are not paying with money for your child to go to government school. You are paying with the future and the mental health of your child to go to school. That's what we need to understand. And if, money is the thing, you've got to realize that most constitutions require the schools be funded. So you have to get out of the school system and take the education of your child into your hands, because that's the moral right thing to do for your child, to not be brainwashed, to not be hypersexualized, to not be confused about their identity by the teachers that are put in places of leadership. That's a parental responsibility to protect the mental health of your child.
Somebody's new to the show.
It's okay.
They're telling me to calm down.
It's okay.
You're clearly new to the show.
Yeah. Well, Rantopia,
I don't calm down.
No, not when it comes to kids and the school systems.
And I don't care who you are, and I don't care who you think I am. I'm not calming down. You know. So whatever.
But Melody says their school board makes 6 figures. It's just insane. It's all about
you pay them great salaries to destroy the minds of your children. I mean, they're well paid to do that.
Here's the thing that I want to mention to you, because when we talk about this thing about pay twice, you end up then maybe buying into a very, very dangerous lie called vouchers. So I want to educate people out there, because we have conservatives out there who want to get their kids out, who actually are going to get their kids out. They're not tied down to the money thing. But while they're getting their kids out, they're demanding vouchers. I pay this tax money. Give me my money back to do that. That's not how that works. Let me just mention to you, in 1792, James Madison was arguing with the House of Representatives that taxes actually belong to the people and not to the government. We've completely left that behind. Our government now believes when you give them money, it belongs to them. And so this is the comfort thing, JC.
Yeah.
It's
and
you sell your soul to debt.
Yeah.
And then, you know what that is, JC? Listen,
this
is what wait.
Some people don't have cash. I get that.
Let me
where the churches need to step up.
This is
where businesses need to step up.
Right. But there was a day, JC, when it was common to put your children in indentured servitude to pay off your debts. When you're sending your children to government school because your debt is too high, that's like in my mind, a form of indentured servitude. And you're right. This is why we need churches. We need Christian businessmen and women who will fund Christian education and give scholarships for Christian education.
And there are Christian schools that do that. There are schools that provide scholarships. There are people, in the congregations or business people that support Christian schools and provide scholarships at private money. So that is a possibility. There are people that don't have a lot of money.
Yes.
Don't have the cash.
Yeah.
I get that. That's a fact. But if you investigate, go look out. You can find a place. I know many of those places. We were just in Minnesota, and there's a Christian education group there that we talked to, that we sat down with. They have people in that provide scholarships. Mm-hmm. I love this. I love this, Erica. So basically, these people that come on and tell me to shut up, and then you tell them you're not going to shut up, you shut up, and so then I'm the bad guy. Whatever, Erica. Would you like your subscription canceled? I don't care. You don't come on this show and tell me to shut up and stop saying whatever I'm saying. Great. I'm glad you're at Liberty First Society learning, but you come in here and be a jerk, and then I better be quiet because she has the subscription. Whatever. I don't care, Erica. The people that are here, they understand this. So you deliver respect, you receive respect. We're not bought and paid for. We're not hirelings. So you don't get a subscription to here, and then that means you come on the show, you tell JC to shut up and calm down and stop saying whatever. Okay.
I love what
toughen up, get over yourself. I'm glad you're here. We're glad you're learning. But if you can't handle the truth and you can't handle this discussion, then whatever. Nobody's trying to attack you. Okay. We're talking about children. Do you not get this? Okay. On at libertyfirstsociety.com, there is a course, The History of American Education. Go watch that if you haven't made it to it. I'll give you a free lifetime subscription so that you don't have to pay anything. And then you can come listen to the show and I'll say what I say, and then you like it or you don't, you can turn it off. But in that course, you'll find out how our children are literally being destroyed by this system.
Right.
And you want to argue and quibble about the fact that you pay taxes over here and now you're going to have to pay homeschool or private school again. That's somehow an imposition in light of the fact that children are literally being destroyed and the country is being destroyed. And one of the number one tools and enemies within the last century has been the public American education system. What attitude we should have is, I will hawk my house. I will sell my car. I will do anything that I have to do to get the money. I will live in a tent in order to afford or be able to effectuate my child not being subject to public education. If you're upset that somehow bothers me, that pisses me off, dear sister in Christ, then I don't know where you're at. That ought to piss everyone off. God is pissed off about the destruction of our children. God in the flesh said it would be better if you had a millstone tied around your neck and dropped into the bottom of the sea than to harm a hair on the head of just one of them. And we're talking about a system that is trying to destroy all of them. So no, thank you, ma'am. God bless you. I love you in Jesus. But I'm not going to calm down while children are literally being offered up to Satan and being destroyed. So if that bothers you, you have stumbled upon the wrong show and the wrong preacher. Amen. End of story.
So we have a class at libertyfirstuniversity.com or libertyfirstsociety.com, at libertyfirstsociety.com called Stolen Education, Stolen Children, Stolen Future. And if you watch that course that I have there at libertyfirstsociety.com, you will see what JC is talking about. What's interesting is that how many parents do you know that will say that the public school system is failing? The public school system is not working. The public school system is a colossal failure. Well, it's quite interesting to understand that the public school system is not failing. It is not a failure. It is actually doing everything it was designed to do.
Exactly.
From the very beginning, The public school system was designed to brainwash your children. The public school system was designed by G. Stanley Hall, Wilhelm Wundt,
Horace Mann, John Dewey,
Thorndike, all designed these. Now, if you're
to make your child illiterate.
If you're a teacher, okay, and you went through college to be a teacher, you know the names that I'm telling you. John Dewey, not the Dewey Decimal System, the other John Dewey. Thorndike, Wundt, Hall, G. Stanley Hall. You know these names because these names our colleges call the fathers of our modern education system. These are the behavioral psychologists that designed our public school system and were very, very clear about the product they were designing. They were designing a school system where they would create docile, obedient subjects. They designed a school system where the people would simply obey. They designed a school system where the children would be illiterate. Okay, I want you to understand. The literacy of America is falling because the public school system is working. Can I say that again? We are graduating more and more illiterates from the American public school system because the public school system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, to deliberately dumb down Americans. If you were deliberately engaging in a practice that was leading your child down a path of malnutrition, if you were deliberately stunting your child's growth, if you were deliberately poisoning your child into sickness, you would be arrested and prosecuted for child abuse. But our public school systems deliberately train our children to be ignorant, docile, obedient imbeciles. That's what our public school system was designed to do. And I'm sure we're buffering because we're telling you things that the AI
overtime
doesn't want us to tell you.
So I'm texting Aaron right now to convert this lady's subscription into a free lifetime subscription.
Okay, great.
So she's not going to come on here ever again and say, I'm a subscriber, and then tell me what I need to say and how I need to say it because she's a subscriber. So you now have a free lifetime
JC,
subscription.
When I taught that class, when I teach that class on the history of the American education system, and we've seen teachers weep. We've seen teachers become physically ill at the realization of what they're teaching, because go back to what you said, JC, about confidence, trusting because of, I know my teachers. This is my community. This is my community. Well, I'm telling you, I have taught the teachers in your community, and when they realized what they were teaching in the textbooks, because everybody has the same textbooks, everybody has the same curriculum, everybody has all your teachers, regardless of where they go to church, regardless of where they eat dinner, and regardless of whether they're your family member, they all teach from the same textbooks written by the same Marxists. And when you show your teachers who they're teaching from, they get a conviction, or at least the good ones do, get a conviction about what they've actually been doing. So, oh man, now everybody wants a free membership, JC.
Yeah.
So there you go. Tick off JC, insult JC, and then you'll get.
I think people are used to, they have these sissy preachers, these panty waist preachers that couldn't say mush if they have a mouthful. And so they know nothing about a Jesus that fashions a whip and drives money changers out of the temple and throws over tables, because they have all these panty waist preachers. So then you're a preacher,
serpent,
and that's not very Christian. You need to calm down, all this sort of stuff. Whatever.
Jesus
it seems to me that if you're not as ticked off about what is happening to our children as I am, then I think you have a problem. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Well, but the legitimate answer to any question out there about tax dollars paying, you paying twice, is that the premise for the argument is illegitimate. You're not going to be paying twice. You're going to be taking back a mind, saving a life, and the money that you pay is not what is paid in the government school system to teach your child. You are paying pennies in relationship to what they're actually spending to teach your child. So
thank you, Richard.
It's a false argument. It really, really is. And I want to break free people from that bondage, because everywhere I go, people tell me it's all, well, I have to pay twice. You're not paying twice. That is a lie.